Anyway, welcome Friday. It's Friday, and we are going to end this conference strong. Drink your coffee, have your breakfast. Don't eat too big of a lunch because we do go till 4 o'clock today. It's a full day. So please, we saved some of the best sessions for the last session because we know it's hard to get you there at 3 o'clock. So if you want the good ones, you got to stay all day. We're going to jump right in because we only have a half an hour for our welcome. And we've already used up 6 minutes about our rivalry week. The governor actually made this officially a rivalry week. So if you forgot to put on your green and white, you still have time between sessions to go throw a hat on, get that sweatshirt on or something so that when you're in the sessions, you are representing that MSU. I'm not saying you can't wear the other color, but I'm not going to give you too much excitement about that color. Patrick can say whatever he wants later about that color, those colors, which when you mix them, make green anyway. All right, sorry.
But when you rip them apart.
I'm going to get on to the rest and mute you all. Mary Jo, you're in trouble. All right, let's get going. So first, we're starting off with a huge thank you to our MACAE members. If you noticed, on Wednesday, I thanked our board. On Thursday, I thanked our conference committee. And now today, it's all about you guys. You guys make MCAE what MCAE is. We had over 330 participants for this conference, and that is a new record. Judy said since she's been there in 2000, she's never seen so many registrants at a conference. So kudos to all of you for sticking through another virtual conference with us. And hopefully this will entice you to come in person when we can get back in person. I know traveling is harder, but I promise we'll make it worth it. And I might even bring the cowbell with me since you guys like it so much. But if it means you won't come, I won't bring it. Just make sure you start to figure out travel in your budget when hopefully at some point, someone's writing on my screen. Patrick, are you just putting blue lines on my PowerPoint slide?
It's not me, but I'll fix it for us.
Someone doesn't want us to say thank you to you. I think they're just trying to put blue in. Someone can go over it with green and erase it. That'd be wonderful. Everyone's getting daffy on a Friday morning. All right. So back to serious moment. Please fill out your session reviews. You have to go back and find your Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday sessions and go in and there's a place to rate them. If you can please go in and do that. You will, I believe, Patrick, they're getting an email with the overall conference review after. Is that correct? I believe they get an email.
Yes, that's happening on Friday. After the conference, you'll get an announcement to go in and do the, it's called the survey. So you'll find it, and there's a survey link, and I believe it's under the resources tab. So that's your overall conference evaluation for your speeches. Please only fill that form out one time. If you have any questions about it, you can get a hold of Judy at the McKay office, and she can, walk you through it. So it's a Google form. It'll go directly to her as soon as you submit it.
So you get all your speeches at once on one form. You do not have to submit it for every session you do. Just fill it out once when you're done with the conference. And please don't forget to go back and rate each session. That's the only way we know which ones you like, which ones you didn't like. If we need to make any changes to anything, that the only way we know how to help you is if you tell us. Otherwise, we're just going to do what we want. So you got to tell us what you need. Also, thank you for all the activity on Whova. I don't know if some of you still haven't gone into the photo board, the polling board. The community has been engaging like crazy. I can't even keep up with it. I'm way behind on some of it. People have been posting amazing articles that I need to go back and save because they're great when you need to have research and data. There's memes. There's some really funny memes in the photo board. There's some adorable animal pictures. There's some Halloween costumes in there. Get your Halloween costumes posted. And of course, start bringing in and adding your pictures of what you wore today. Got to get your MSU pics in there. So just thank you so much. This conference would be nothing without all of your interaction and engagement.
So I just want to give a I just like to give a quick shout out. So far on our leaderboard, Samantha Zettner has moved up into first place and knocked Bob Medlin down to
Oh,
second.
they've been going back and forth all
So
night
Bob, you better
long.
get going. Beth Feldkamp is at number 3. Tammy Glupker is at number 5, and number 4, and Michelle Dervise is at number 5. Good job, guys.
There's still lots of time. Nobody give up, because people, I can guarantee you, are going to be going to the last second to get that last second first place. So they've been battling. Bob and them have been bouncing back and forth all night long. Like I checked at 11 and I checked this morning and it flipped again. You guys, I hope you got enough sleep. All right, so we're going to move on. Patrick, oh, you wanted remote. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't give you remote control of my screen. I didn't see that on the other. I was too busy. All right, we also can't leave the morning without, again, thanking our sponsors. Our platinum sponsor was Labor and Economic Opportunities Workforce Development Department. Our diamond sponsors were Burlington English, Digital Sign Up. Why can't I move my, oh. All right, hang on. Somebody messed with my whole presentation now. I'll get it back. Nothing like messing with my mojo. Hang on. All right, sorry about that. Our diamond sponsors are Burlington English, Digital Sign Up, New Readers Press. Gold sponsors, Casas, Aztec Software, Elio, and our silver sponsors, the Academy of Medical Professions, Data Recognition Corporation, and HiSet. We also have several more exhibitors. Go find them in the exhibitor booths. They have great deals for you. They have great products that you can use to increase the productivity in your programs, and student registration systems, educational software, training, testing, everything you need to be successful. Our sponsors can help you with. So please go give them a shout out in their booths. Now, luckily for all of you, I'm going to hand this over to Patrick Brown, our executive director, who's going to take over the rest of the morning, and he's going to do it kindly.
Good morning, Tammy. Good morning, everyone. Just another note about the vendors on the homepage. If you go there, there's a vendor bingo form. You can download it. If you visit all the vendor booths and answer all the questions and submit that, you'll be entered into a prize for this afternoon's networking session. So far, we only had a few entries, so your chances of winning are pretty high if you get it in early this morning before noon. With that, though, I'd love to welcome Michael Matos. He is our COABE, the Coalition on Adult Basic Education Region 3 representative. Michigan is an active participant in COABE in our regional area. We participated in an Invest in the Midwest virtual rally just a few weeks ago for Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. And all of you as Mckay members are also COABE members. And so Michael has got a few updates that he wanted to share with us, and he's also presenting throughout the conference. So thanks again for being here, Michael.
Great, thank you, Patrick. It's great to be here. Good morning, everyone. Patrick, can I share my slides? So just a few updates, and then I will share these slides with Patrick, and then hopefully you can put it out on the app. My name is Michael Matos. I'm the COABE Region 3 representative, and it's a pleasure working with all the states in the region, and especially Michigan. Just talking a little bit about the great benefits that we provide at COABE, and there'll be links on this presentation that you can click, and it'll take you right to that spot within the massive, very informational COABE website. So become a COABE member. If you're a McKay member, obviously you're a COABE member as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about our upcoming conference, which will be in person and virtual. The conference in April in Seattle, Washington, and stay tuned through this link to find out more about the setup and everything else you need to know about the conference. Adult Education and Family Literacy Week, a great success, exceeded all expectations of what we were trying to do for that week. And what we'd like everyone to know is to stay engaged, continue to advocate year long. And our collective impact report is also on the link that is on this slide as well in the COABE site. And just a little bit about the events that happened. We had, obviously, here in the Midwest, we had Invest in the Midwest virtual rally where more than 100 attended our virtual rally, as well as all of the great stories that we were able to share. It turned out to be a well-attended event and for the first time. And it was a pleasure being part of it. South Dakota had 7 mayoral proclamations for adult education, which was pretty successful as far as their bringing in their legislators to be part of supporting adult education. The state of Alabama had a huge digital marketing campaign as well for adult education. And there was just so much going as state associations and state offices and Twitter storms. So quite a bit was done this AFL week, and hopefully it continues to grow. So thank you, McKay and Michigan, for putting the time to put together this Invest in the Midwest virtual rally that we had. Just continuing here a little bit, Move Ahead with Adult Ed, incredibly successful program where we now have over 2,000 local programs. So if you want to increase enrollment numbers, obviously enrollment hours, and you want to list your organization on this Move Ahead with Adult Ed campaign and make that happen, we can help with that. 2021 Intersect is a workforce symposium connecting educators and business. If you haven't registered for this, please do so. I have. It looks very interesting. November 9th at 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. It looks like it's going to be a great event. If you did not get a chance to attend the opening, which was September 22nd, there is a recording. Once again, the links are tied into this slide, and you can take a look at that before you decide to sign on, and you can watch it on that replay button. IBM Skills Build, thousands of certificates been awarded already, especially if you're a first-time presenter anywhere, whether it's COABE conference or any conference. Look at their certification. There's a lot to be learned there, and it's just a great page to build many of those skills. So look through the COABE site, look at our resources. There's a lot there. There's some links on here as well to get to our awards, our recognitions. There's nominations and elections. There's some elections going on in some regions. The Workforce Symposium, the call for presentations for COABE 2022, that closed on the 15th, but you can keep track of what's going on for the planning of the conference. And then we have a pretty big legislative center that you can look at. And then finally, please attend our membership meetings, our state leader meetings. Our next COABE membership meeting for all of Region 3 is November 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern. The links are on here. The whole calendar is also linked to here. So please attend and let's hear your voices. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michael. We so appreciate the partnership with COABE. They've really helped us and given us a lot of resources and tools to be able to do the work that we do. And we'll keep everyone informed here in Michigan of some of these great updates as well. Thank you so much, Michael.
Patrick, is it okay if I share the link to this presentation in the chat?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. We are so excited to announce the last two of our awards this morning. And I'm excited to announce the Strategic Partner Award. This award is new this year for McKay and all of our members. And we were excited to do this as a part of, we know that so many of our programs, because of the work that you do and because of the resources you have, are so invested with working with partners across your community and across the state, or maybe even locally as a region. And so the Strategic Partner Award recognizes partnership bonds between any McKay member program, adult, alternative, community education, workforce development, and a local community agency or partner. It could be a local business, a nonprofit entity, or a government body. And maybe your program has established a new and powerful partnership with a local agency is producing extraordinary results on behalf of children, youth, and adults. So it's a wonderful award to make you think about, why didn't we think of that partnership? And so we're so excited to announce that our wonderful member, Katie Thompson, nominated Streetwise Partners, and they are this year's McKay 2021 Strategic Partner Award winner. And I'll read a couple remarks from them. Streetwise Partners is honored to accept this award. Thank you to Troy Continuing Education for considering us for such an honorable award. TRAC has been crucial to our growth as an organization and our understanding of the need for a workforce pipeline for the communities we serve. We truly appreciate the time and effort that TRAC has put into our partnership, and it allows us to continue externally to improve mentor skill sets and allow us to streamline career pathways for awe-inspiring job seekers. Since Streetwise launched in Detroit in 2019, it has served 150 job seekers and seen amazing results. About 85% of mentees graduate from the program. 70% of graduates are employed within 1 year, with another 20% pursuing advanced training. Professional contacts increase from 0 to 100 plus in 13 weeks, and personal income grows on average of 250%. And that's because of amazing community partnerships. A year ago, when we began our partnership with TRAC, as we transitioned our programs to a virtual platform, we never dreamed of having such strong partners or being considered for an award. Again, thank you, McKay. And I see Alfonso is on. I don't know if you'd like to just add to that, Alfonso from Streetwise, if you want to unmute and just say hello.
Good morning, Alfonso Amos here, the proud program directors of Streetwise Partners Michigan. I'm actually going to just pass this over to our wonderful program manager, Ebony, who helped facilitate this partnership with TRAC.
Yeah, thank you so much for this award. I actually started connecting with Tammy Brown, and she shot me right over to Katie because she was like, we have this awesome TRAC program that Katie is ahead of. I'm going to shoot you right over to her, and the rest is history. So once again, thank you so much for all of your help and also just collaboration during this weird pandemic that we're all still just trying to figure out what's right, what's wrong, and how do we get around it? How do we work together? So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Streetwise, Alfonso and Ebony. Congratulations to you both. All right. We have another wonderful award this morning to award as well. And that is our Outstanding Educator Award. Teachers in our programs often are the most consistent and positive contact with our learners, no matter the age. This award recognizes a teacher that stands out due to their caring, imaginative spirit, reliability, and instructional design and strategy. Whether they teach high school English, yoga for seniors, preschool literacy, or any other instructional area, we select only the best and brightest from Michigan Community, Alternative, and Adult Education. And this year's Outstanding Educator Award goes to Meredith Donahue from the Family Literacy Center. Congratulations, Meredith. I think Meredith might be on, but I know she maybe is feeling a little under the weather. So I'm going to share her thanks and appreciation for her. She says, dear friends, I'm truly honored to have been selected as McKay's 2021 Outstanding Educator of the Year. I am fortunate to have been part of the Family Literacy Center team for the last 14 years. I can assure you that like anyone else in adult education, we don't do it for buckets of money, fame, or glory. And I'm just going to go and make sure that everyone's muted. That needs to be, so that we can recognize Meredith. She also says this job means something because every day she has a chance to help someone build a better life. I get to help them remove huge barriers to their success and pursue their dreams. It is a privilege to be able to influence the lives of our students. I get to say, good job, and I'm so proud of you. I get to celebrate their accomplishments, build knowledge, share information, and try to show them more doors that they can open. I believe that is why we become educators, and that is why I'm so deeply honored by this award. Thank you. Congratulations to you, Meredith, from the Family Literacy Center. All of our award winners, I should say, from the entire conference will be elevated and put into submission for the COE National Awards. And so we're very excited for that. And our nominations will be open again over the summer, and we would encourage everyone to nominate for next year's 2022 Fall Conference Award. Anyone can win. You have to play to win. You have to nominate in order to win. And we know that so many people are doing wonderful and fabulous work. So congratulations to all of our award winners across the conference. And now I will turn it over to Ms. Kelly Vela to talk a little bit more just about a couple of last minute reminders to stay engaged with us throughout the day.
That's right. So make sure you're staying engaged in the Whova app, get some more points, get yourself up higher on the leaderboard and earn some extra tickets for the raffle. We've got some awesome baskets. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see them or not, but if you haven't, go into resources and go to the document center and you'll see there's 7 baskets that we are raffling off, and they will be hand delivered to the winners. So everybody got 1 entry with your paid registration for the conference, but then as you're engaging and taking part in the social events and whatnot, you're earning extra entries into the drawing for those baskets. So we're going to do that at noon today. So
12:30.
12:30. Okay, so get yourself higher up the leaderboard, get some extra points.
And 12:30 is when we're also doing the pizza photo and the pet photo, right, Renee?
Right. We'll also be revealing the exhibitor bingo winner. And so I saw a couple comments in the chat. So if you go to the homepage of the application, so go back to home, and in the center of the application where all the directions are about announcements and where to go and what to find, scroll down there just a little bit, and there is a link to the exhibitor bingo right on the homepage there. Couldn't have made it any easier. If you go right in there, click on it, all the directions are there in that document. You'll follow the directions. You only got a few hours left, so make sure that you participate in that.
I heard Renee try to chime in about our social events.
Well, just to say how much fun it was. Sorry, you can't see camera yet. I don't have my face done. But we had so much fun last night. And just thank you so much to everybody who came. I was a little sleepy this morning because I couldn't go to bed till 1 because I was too hyped up from trivia.
And lastly, we would just like to say thank you for being a part of our conference. We acknowledge that this has been a very tumultuous time at times over the last 18 months, very challenging time. But what a better way to connect with so many of you. And I would say on a personal level, it's been really wonderful because many of you I've known before. We've continued to grow and deepen and strengthen our professional and personal partnerships and relationships. But so many of you I've also just met virtually. I only know you from this part up and your face, your beautiful faces. And so I'll take that as much as I can, because those friendships and those partnerships are just what make McKay what it is and what make the association grow stronger. And I hope that you'll use this energy and this time of reflection as the conference to really renew yourself, recharge, and think about ways that we can rebuild our programs back, that we can make them better. We can make sure that they're really meeting the needs of our participants and the families that we serve across Michigan. Oftentimes, I think we create systems or we become parts of systems that really maybe benefit the workers and the people that are doing the work, as opposed to supposed to be directed in a servant leadership model where we respond to the populations that we serve. And so it's a very humbling thing to kind of be rocked down to our core like we have over the last 18 months, but I'm really optimistic about what we can do together what we can do focused on working to improve the lives of Michigan families all across our state. So thank you everyone for being here. And I had to get a little shout out there on Go Blue. I messed with Tammy's slide there. All right. Well, I see that our wonderful keynote speaker is on, so we are going to transition. And welcome to our keynote speaker for this morning, Friday, October 29th, the Transformative Hope of Adult Education. I am so excited, proud, and honored to welcome Michelle Kuo. I'm going to read a little bit about Michelle, but I wanted to tell you a story about how I became connected with Michelle. I was at a bookstore randomly. I've told this story, so apologies if a couple of you have heard it, but I just feel important to share. I was at a bookstore randomly over the summer, and a friend and I were daring each other just to pull a book and say, let's just buy it and read it and see what happens. What do we have to lose? And so I saw this book. It was a yellow binding. It's actually right here. And, you know, I thought, gosh, you don't often see yellow spined books there. And so I come to it. And on the cover, it says Reading with Patrick. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. That's a little, I don't know if the universe is talking to me or what. And so I started to read about Michelle and all of her work. She was, and I'll just read a little bit from her bio. She was born and raised in Kalamazoo. She taught English at an alternative school in the Arkansas Delta for 2 years. After teaching, she attended Harvard Law School as a Paul and Daisy Soros Fellow and worked legal aid at a nonprofit for Spanish-speaking immigrants in the Fruitvale district of Oakland, California, on a Skadden Fellowship with a focus on tenants and workers' rights. She has volunteered as a teacher at the Prison University Project and clerked for a federal appeals court judge in the Ninth Circuit. Currently, she teaches courses on race, law, and society at the American University of Paris. The more that I got into this book and read about it, I was even more intrigued by the fact that her educational career, and one of the pillars of it, of Patrick, was a student that she worked with, and his name was Patrick Browning. So I felt like this is the universe talking. We need to have Michelle come and talk to us at this conference about her wonderful experiences. And I'll just read the first little bit about her book, and then I'll turn it over to Michelle. Recently graduated from Harvard University, Michelle Kuo arrived in the rural town of Helena, Arkansas as a Teach for America volunteer, bursting with optimism and drive. But she soon encountered the jarring realities of life in one of the poorest counties in America, still disabled by the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. In this stirring memoir, Kuo, the child of Taiwanese immigrants, shares the story of her complicated but rewarding mentorship of one student, Patrick Browning, and his remarkable literary and personal awakening. So I'm so honored that she is joining us. She's actually joining us live from Taiwan. And so it is nighttime there as we're getting started. She's winding down her day, but we so appreciate her coming and being here. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michelle Kuo.
Hi, everybody. Can you see me?
We can see you.
Okay, that's great. I don't know why I can't see myself, but maybe it's better not to be able to see myself. I see Patrick. I'm so glad to be here today. Let me just put this to original size.
Patrick, does she need to share slides? Do I need to? I'm going to stop sharing so you can make her the full speaker view if she doesn't have slides.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. Okay, now I can see myself, so I know that I have nothing in my teeth or anything. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm just honored. I feel so privileged to be here. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan, born and raised, and Michigan is very close to my heart. Went to Michigan public schools, and I'd like to thank especially Patrick for the honor of having me here today. I'd like to thank the Michigan Association of Community and Adult Education. I am calling live from Taiwan, so it's evening here. And it's a rainy day in Taiwan. It's often rainy here. I want to thank you all for coming out today and for doing what you do. And I want to give a special shout out to some of the teachers who are willing to talk to me, the educators, Brenda Baker, Gigi Selka, Kimberly Zizapansky, Whitney Detmer, Christy Nelson, Maria Zitterkoff, Kathy Wagner, Sally Newland, and if I missed anybody, Pam Valatorni, if I missed anybody, please forgive me. I had so much fun speaking to some educators as I prepared for today's talk and thought about what I really wanted to share. And it's quite intimidating to talk to all of you because you do such inspiring and important work daily. I'm going to divide my talk here in two parts today. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story and how I came to adult education. And that's a story that I wrote about in my book, the story of how I came to teach a former student named Patrick in a county jail in Arkansas, where I first met him in alternative school. Many of you teach in alternative school, so you know the kind of challenges that teachers there faced. This story is about so many things, but most of all, it is about human connection across difference. We are different in so many ways, even more so today, in race, in class, in religion, and whether we had a shot at a decent education. And today's politically polarized atmosphere only accentuates those differences. In such a separate society, how do we connect with each other? The story that I wrote about is a story about reading. It's a story about how to create a shareable world through reading, through education. And it's about how to create powerful human connections, but how that connection is always limited and always partial. Reading is especially a very lonely undertaking. I hope this talk also helps us think about education in prison, something that many of you talked about when we had conversations. We Americans make up 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners. The single biggest predictor for whether you go to prison, and I think this is the crowd that already knows what the answer is, but in many talks that I give, people don't know. What is the single biggest predictor for whether somebody goes to prison? It's whether or not you have a high school diploma. The second thing I want to talk about today is, wait for it, is you. I've had the immense joy of talking to some of you, and I want to describe some of the stories I've heard that you've told me, some of the challenges you've faced, and some of the qualities of you that I've observed that gave me so much inspiration and actually helped me to understand my own story in adult education better. And I just want to say, I'm so sad that there are 169 people here and I only got to talk to about 10 or so. So if you'd like to share any more stories with me, I put my email and contact here. If Patrick invites me back next year, I'll tell the stories next year, or maybe I'll collect them and so that Patrick can distribute them all to you. I wanted to talk to every one of you and only had time for 10 or so. So first, my story. Reading changed my life. I grew up in Kalamazoo County in the 1980s. I went to good public schools. My favorite courses were English and history. But I was a quiet student, a shy student, and often afraid to speak in class. At the time, I didn't know any Asian American writers interested in social change. And even as I was writing my book, I had no models for anybody. And Asian Americans would come up to me and say, "You're the first Asian American I know who tries to make a difference," which has shocked me. And I think as a young person, I turned to African American writers to help fill that void. The person who probably most moved me was James Baldwin. He had a line that was this line: there are liberals who read all the right books, who have all the proper attitudes, but no real convictions. When the chips are down and you expect them to deliver, they are somehow not there. I took that phrase literally, they are somehow not there. And I thought, where should I place myself? Where do I put myself so that I'm somebody who shows up? And it's especially moving for me to be in this audience because you are all people who show up every day, who who make your convictions real by seeking out those connections. And so I feel particularly comfortable and humbled by this audience today. Why did I choose the Mississippi Delta? I thought it was a powerful place of action and history. It was a place where it was said that Martin Luther King wept watching 4 kids share an apple. It was a place where the term Black Power was forged. It was a place where the civil rights battle began and the marches that became famous and lit the whole country on fire. But when I got to the Delta, what shocked me was that the Arkansas Delta was still poor and still segregated. And now the separation of Black and white was enforced by income rather than by law. I taught at the alternative school, and as many of you know better than me, it was treated by the school district as a dumping ground for the kids who were quote unquote unruly, who quote unquote didn't want to learn. Many of my 8th graders had failed the 8th grade several times, and this was their last shot at succeeding. By the end of the year at my school, half the teachers were substitutes. We had no library, no guidance counselor, but we did have a police officer. When students got into a fight, the police car would show up. Somebody would call the police and students would get hauled off. These are 15-year-olds hauled off into a police car and sent to jail, where they were told to think about where they might end up. I was 22, dumb, naive, well-intentioned, and idealistic. I imagined myself teaching African-American history. I had these grand ideas of connecting deeply with the students over their history, but something didn't work. I wasn't connecting, something wasn't sticking. And to add to this, I was the only Asian American many of my students had ever met. And I should back up and say that 100% of the students were African American because white families in the 1970s had created their own private schools to avoid complying with federal desegregation orders. So in this tiny town of 5,000 people, it was like incredibly segregated. So I had to find a different way. My way wasn't working. I thought I could fill them up with what I thought they would like or should know. And so I took a pause and I started to build a classroom library. I tried to get books that they told me they wanted to read. And one thing that I'm quite embarrassed about was how diverse their reading interests were. One student wanted to learn about Japanese martial arts. Another student wanted geography books. Another student wanted rhyming dictionaries. Other students wanted to know about where I was from, where my parents from. And at the time, I didn't know very much about my own history. And I found myself struggling to explain my parents' history and my grandparents' history. What I learned, though, was that as I built this classroom library, every student found a book that they wanted. Every student had tastes that were completely unpredictable. And every student had a kind of desire for full intellectual liberty. During silent reading, which was 30 minutes a day, you couldn't hear a pin drop. Every student was reading, every student was connecting with their own book, and they were proud to carry that book around them during school time. These were the kids that everybody told me, oh, they don't want to learn, they can't stay quiet. And even in these small moments, I felt, okay, this is where it begins. This is where you begin to create these spaces of freedom. By the time I got to be a better teacher, it took a year. I met a young student named Patrick. He was 15. He was in the 8th grade. And he'd already been held back twice. He was a quiet kid, and I didn't even notice him until he jumped between 2 girls to stop a fight between them. And he said to me about them, Ms. Quo, I think they just gave up on life, and that's why. I think that's why they're getting into a fight. So Patrick had one problem: he wouldn't come to school, and this is something that also came up in a lot of my conversations with you about retention. He just wouldn't come to school. Because I had the zealous optimism of a 23-year-old, I just showed up to his house and I said, "Why don't you come to school?" A lot of things in education policy are really complicated, but this was quite simple. He started to come when I asked him to. And he was an extremely motivated reader and writer. He was constantly writing poems and poem lyrics and keeping them on scraps of paper in his pocket. And he got the most improved award that year and graduated from the 8th grade. During the end of this time, I had to decide whether or not to keep teaching in Arkansas or whether to go to law school, which my parents had strongly pushed me to apply to. My parents are this, you're not supposed to stereotype your own parents, but they were stereotypical. They weren't proud that I was a teacher. They didn't tell people what I was doing. They always told people she's going to become a lawyer or a doctor. And they were frankly embarrassed that I was there. And I was also young and unsure of how to make an impact. And so I understood that my life was at a crossroads. And even at the time that I chose to go to law school, I felt like I was doing the easier thing and I wasn't doing the brave thing, which was to keep going, to keep growing, and to stay connected to my students. And went to law school at Harvard. And during my third year of law school, I discovered my friend Tim, who had stayed in Arkansas. He was already in his 5th year. We had gone there together. Called and said, didn't you have Patrick as a student? And my first thought was that Patrick had died because there's a high mortality rate in the Delta, as there are in all poverty-stricken areas. And then Tim told me that Patrick had gotten into a fight and killed someone, and he was 18 and had just been arrested. I thought it had to be a mistake. I was shocked. And in retrospect, I think the most middle-class thing about me was my shock. I think most people who grow up in poverty-stricken neighborhoods know that violence is possible. It's a way of protection. It's a way of being vigilant. There are few resources. And nonetheless, I was shocked. And I immediately got on a plane and flew down to Arkansas to visit Patrick in jail. What broke my heart was that he was surprised to see me. He didn't expect anyone to, least of all his old teacher, to come visit him. And I learned about the circumstances of his case, which I won't go into too much now, except to say that his younger sister, who was special ed, had been walked home by a highly inebriated 25-year-old. And Patrick kept telling this person to get off my porch, and the person wouldn't get off the porch. So Patrick said he was scared and had a knife and stabbed him. And the person was walking off, which was a detail Patrick kept saying, like he was walking off as if to say he hadn't died. I hadn't meant to kill him. In a rural area, as many of you know who work in rural areas, the ambulances are very slow for various reasons. The ambulance was really slow. It took at least 20 minutes, and that man died. Even at the time that this happened, I understood this event would change his life. I didn't understand how. I already had the feeling that I had come back too late, even though he was 18. And this is something that I constantly think about, whether it was too late, whether it's, I think all of us who do adult education believe it's never too late. It's never too late. We tell that to ourselves, we tell that to our students, and it's not a lie, it's true. I've had 80-year-old students in prison reciting Shakespeare and wanting to learn. But it is also true that if you do a lot of work, preventive work in education, you can prevent devastation and an excruciating journey later on. Patrick did something he knew he could never take back, and he still carries that sadness with him today. And as I always tell people, if you believe you don't deserve to flourish, you will not flourish. And that's true for a person of any class. And I think Patrick still struggles with what he did. The story keeps going. So after I graduate from law school, I've gotten a legal aid job helping immigrants in Oakland. I think to myself, I haven't sold out. I'm still doing good. But in the back of my mind, I think I'll never go back to Arkansas. What if I never go back to Arkansas? What were those 2 years anyhow? Did they mean anything? And so what unfolded in that year was that I postponed my job in Oakland and went back to Arkansas to help Patrick with his case. As I helped him with his case, though, I realized there wasn't much I could do as a lawyer. He was being charged with a first degree. I talked to the public defender, I talked to the prosecutor. They're willing to lower it to manslaughter, which is considered a very good deal in the legal world. And at the same time, as I was visiting Patrick, I realized that the problem was much deeper than his legal case. I asked him to write a letter to his daughter. I learned that he now had a baby daughter. And I know that this is going to resonate with all of you who teach people who are often parents. And I thought I had come up with this brilliant lesson plan as a teacher, write a letter to your daughter. But I read Patrick's letter to his daughter, and it was not what I wanted to read. It said, "Dear Cherish, I've let you down. I'm sorry, Patrick." It was written as an apology. He felt like he had nothing worthwhile to say to her. And besides that, it was atrociously written. He had been a great writer. He had been a good speller. And, you know, as a teacher, you see how quickly somebody can progress with your care, but you don't think about how quickly they regress once you disappear. And Patrick had basically dropped out the year I left. So he was technically in the 9th grade with no credits, which I know is something that a lot of you encounter when you're doing high school diplomas. There's so much more to say. So I just want to say one quick thing that I don't usually say, but because you're a group of people who understand, it's like, I think when you talk to people outside of adult education, you sound really self-important, or people think you're self-important, or that you're acting like a savior when you say, I'm the I was his link to the world. I helped him gain literacy. I helped him gain confidence. But it's just absolutely true. That's what teachers do. That's what we do every day. We give people a sense of confidence and growing, and we are their link to success in the world. And so I thought to myself, what if I had stayed? He would have gone to the 9th grade. And all the research shows that if a student stays in school, especially the crucial 9th grade year, where especially the math, as many of you know, the math is a thing that really keeps people back. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten into trouble. Maybe he wouldn't have gone to prison. But when I say that to people who haven't done adult education, I sound like I think I'm that important. It's not that. It's just that I think if I had stayed, he wouldn't have dropped out. Anyways, in prison, Patrick and I continue to work every day. And I started to bring books like a dictionary, and he loved pictures of trees and birds. So guidebooks to trees and birds in Arkansas, where he would use those to write poetry. We started to recite poems every day. We read James Baldwin, we read Frederick Douglass. And deep down, I wanted him to feel like he could write a letter to his daughter where he was writing something gorgeous and beautiful, and where she could see that her dad had a full, brimming inner life. We started to develop a new ritual during this time where we recited poetry. I just want to share a few of the poems that we read. A couple were Japanese haikus, which are deceptively simple and mysterious, but I think they're great for teaching because students don't feel intimidated and they feel an entryway into it. One is this: don't worry, spiders, I keep house casually. Another has to do with the first day of snow. And you can imagine these northern Japanese mountains. Deer licking first frost from each other's coats, which is a lovely image of deer during the first snow. Another is a poem by W.S. Merwin, where he wrote this poem when he saw his wife in the garden, and he knew they were going to spend the rest of their life together. And he says, let me imagine that we will come again when we want to, and it will be spring. We'll be no older than we ever were. I love that line. We'll be no older than we ever were. The worn griefs will have eased like the early cloud through which morning slowly comes to itself. And I asked Patrick, what's your favorite line? And he said, I love the line, we will be no older than we ever were. It reminds me of my mother, of a time that just stops where she's not older or I'm not older. And I thought a lot about how when you read together, the lines of the poetry become personal to you because they're personal to somebody else. And in that sense, reading together is so different than reading alone. We read Frederick Douglass, and I thought that this would be, and this is another instance of what you learn when you teach, I thought this would be an uplifting story of Frederick Douglass, the hero, the famous escaped slave, the abolitionist. But the book put Patrick in a kind of panic. There's a scene in this book where the masters give slaves alcohol on Christmas Day. And it's their way of showing the slaves that they can't handle freedom because they know the slaves will get drunk and stumble on the fields and feel that they don't deserve to be free. Douglas, for his part, is not deceived. He refuses the jinn and so refuses ignorance, but he also envies that kind of ignorance that others, his fellow slaves, have. Patrick saw himself in Douglas. He also saw himself in those other slaves. His favorite line was this line: anything to get rid of thinking. It was this thinking, this everlasting thinking of my condition that tormented me. He said he related. He said that people don't want to think about pain. They don't want to think about the past. He said he wasn't good like Douglas, but that we have to think if we want to ever be free. In spite of the anxiety that the book produced in him, he kept reading. He read in a concrete stairway that had no light. And I thought to myself, I wish he could see himself in Douglas more. I wish he could. We read a book by Marilyn Robinson, which is about a pastor who is writing a letter to his son. And this was Patrick's favorite line: I'm writing this in part to tell you, if you ever wonder what you've done in your life, you've been a miracle, more than a miracle. You've been God's grace to me. Patrick said he thought of his daughter, and it was the language of that pastor to his son that inspired his own letters to his daughter. These letters were gorgeous, they were loving, they were full of longing. And I've thought to myself how brave it was to write these letters to his daughter, this person who he felt he had let down. How many of us have faced a person we feel we've let down every day? And he did that, facing her word by word, holding himself accountable with intense concentration. And facing her, he was also facing himself. As I watched him, I thought to myself, do I put myself at risk in the same way every day? I want to take a step back from the story and now give the reality check that all of you know so well. Did reading change his life? Did our year together reading every day change his life? And the answer is, I don't know. He got out of jail. He's still struggling. And his journey has been excruciating as a person out of prison. He gets turned away from jobs because of his record. He has child support debt that got piled up after prison. On his way biking to a construction job, he got hit by a car which didn't stop. The hospital sent him an emergency healthcare bill that he can't pay for. The state of Arkansas cut off his food stamps. His closest friend in the world, his mother, and honestly his only friend besides me, died the year he got out at age 43 of heart problems, which is a huge problem in the Delta. And most of all, as I said earlier, he still hasn't forgiven himself and hasn't seen a mental health counselor for that. A person who does not feel he deserves to flourish will not flourish. So where does this story leave us? We're all educators who seek to transform our lives, and yet we face so many different barriers. We're the wealthiest country in the world, and yet our society is still very unequal. We're also a systematically undereducated society, and all of you are on the front lines. I want to speak a little bit about human connection in adult education and about the kind of work that all of you do to prevent this chaos, to prevent this self-degradation, and to prevent people from living lives where they feel that they cannot flourish. Let me begin by thanking all of the people who spoke to me to share their stories. I didn't want to reveal your names because I wasn't sure how much of it was confidential, but I want to just begin with the most obvious characteristics of the people who are on the front lines trying to prevent these tragedies. The most obvious characteristic which radiated in the adult educators that I've met was an incredible empathy for your students, your ability to wear many hats, your ability to recognize all the barriers that the students face. One example was a lack of childcare, especially during COVID. One educator told me about a student whose husband was in jail and her 3 boys were at home because of COVID, so she couldn't come, she stopped coming. And this educator and her colleagues wanted to help her get her diploma. The eldest child was at special ed, the youngest ones were in fifth grade and 3rd grade. And then this educator told me, quote, "We started to let her come with 3 boys and we kept them occupied. She needed a high school diploma because she left school in the 9th grade and had 0 credits." And that was the same position Patrick was in. What was driving her was her 3 kids. So we watched her kids, and she eventually graduated with a high school diploma. To see her walk across the stage, that's the biggest reward. Another person told me that she was an advocate for her, for a person. I just wanted to read to you this quote. I went to the office, this educator went to the officer, said he's doing everything that he possibly can. He's living in a car. She went to his priest and got him shower tokens, which they can't provide an adult education. And he didn't want to go to school because he was worried that he smelled. So these educators were working to provide food and shelter, as well as advocacy for the probation officer. The second quality that I observed in the adult educators, all of you here, is that in spite of all of our differences, you see yourself in your students. I've talked a lot about the differences between Patrick and me, including racial and geographic and class. But one of the most important parts of our job is to be human and to see ourselves and others. This can be hard for teachers because we're fixers and we're healers, which means by definition, we focus on the defects to be fixed and healed. But one thing that I loved was how I saw in all of you patience and humility to see yourself and others. And I'm just going to give you a few examples of some of the literal ways in which you saw yourselves. One educator told me she identified with the students because she herself had grown up in a homeless shelter and experienced domestic violence. At least 2 educators I spoke to were teenage parents themselves, and I wanted to share some of their words. One person said, "I was 5 months pregnant when I graduated high school. Back in the mid-90s, they wanted someone like me to drop out. So I understand that there are billions of reasons why people don't finish school." Another person had an experience as a teenage mother where she had to drop out of school. She lost her college scholarship. And then after the baby was born, she went back to school, but she couldn't afford childcare. And so she said, and I loved this story, "I maneuvered life around trying to get back to school. I snuck my 3-month-old baby into a classroom of 300 people. And that finally at one point, the professor found me and said, 'Excuse me, do you have a baby in here?' And said, 'Such a well-behaved baby.' And this educator said, 'She's been here all semester,' and persuaded him to let her keep the baby there. Another educator mentioned her experience as a struggling student herself. She said, "I never thought I'd work at a school. I was never a good student myself, so I can relate to the problems that my students had." And yet another educator shared her experience as a mother and told me how that changed her approach. She said, "My son struggled in school. He was a square peg that tries to fit into the round hole. He got into the wrong crowd, made bad choices. He was ADD. We tried to homeschool, that didn't work. Finally, we had him get his GED through this program, and that did a lot for him. My experience has always been to feed the underdog, to feel for the underdog. Some kids think outside the box. Before I was more rigid, and now I realize people are different. You know, if a student doesn't bring a pencil to class, who cares? I take each student individually, case by case, whole person." I also observed so much humility in the teachers I met, how they're comfortable talking about their own challenges. One teacher said, "I'm happy doing manual labor. There's no task below me." And yet another teacher talked about how humbling it was to meet students from 20 different countries when there's a person who was a surgeon in his former life, but is now a refugee learning English. Another thing I observed in all of you is valuing community, valuing family, creating family in community. One woman who's a Lebanese American carries the work of everybody in her family. She said, "Yes, both of my grandmothers were trailblazers for women's education. They each created a nonprofit to help women get educated. Back then it was culinary work, sewing, and secretarial work. 50 years in America, I am doing the same thing, carrying on what they do." And yet another person shared how when her grandfather was on his deathbed. I loved the story. He repaired semi-trailers. There was nobody in the family who had gone to college. And she said, when on his deathbed, he grabbed my hand. I was trying to figure out what he wanted me to say. I said, the baby's going to be fine, because she was pregnant at the time. I said, Grandma will be fine. I'll take care of her. He still wouldn't let go of my hand. I said, I don't know what you want me to hear, what you want to hear. And then I understood what he wanted me to say. And I said, okay, I'll go to college. I'll be the first person in my family. And she also said that this would be the man in her family, the person in the family who would come to haunt her. So she wanted to honor that promise. I saw also in so many of you a willingness to be creative, constancy and loyalty. As one person said, people are gone for 2 to 3 years, and when they come back, you are the constant. We are the constant. We are going to be here for them when they come back. I saw openness to other people's need, a willingness to embrace other people's need. As one person said, quote, when someone depends on you, you don't want to let that person down. I saw such a desire to build other people's confidence and motivate them to throw parties celebrating their GED, their diplomas, their tests, to write them handwritten encouraging notes. And most delightfully, I saw pleasure in other people's success. This, I think, is a mark of a deeply good soul, to be happy for somebody else's success. And in today's social media world, and I'm guilty of this, I get jealous, I get envious of other people. I'm not always happy for other people's success. So talking to you all was so soul-filling. As one person said, remarking on her student who had, she said, even her mother told her she was stupid, dumb, would never amount to anything. She graduated and she was in tears when I told her she was going to graduate with high honors. And then this person said, people like that make my day. My family wants me to retire, and I say, I enjoy that kind of interaction. I enjoy seeing people succeed. And that just made me want to cry. Her family's telling her to retire, but she just wants to keep doing this because she loves seeing people succeed. And finally, a person told me the story of somebody who was really resistant to learning. He was a security guard whose supervisor told him that he didn't have good grammatical skills to submit reports. He was embarrassed, he was angered that he had to come. He said it wasn't his choice. But then gradually through this educator, the security guard found his confidence. He found his ability to read and write. And it also made a difference in his personal life. And you can imagine that I was particularly touched because this person started to read with his daughter at night and to go to her conferences and talk to her teachers, and was able to read signs on the way to work. All of these stories you told me, I was flooded with gratitude that you do this work every day. It's hard work. And it's work that fills the soul, but that also makes you stay up at night worrying whether or not this person is going to end up without food, without meal, without rent. And I just want to end and say, even though my book and the story doesn't end with a happy ending for Patrick, I do not doubt at all that the process of education changed his experience of incarceration. It gave him a sense of success, and it gave him a connection to his daughter and to a world outside of himself. It gave us a universe that we could share. It gave me a chance to meet a person. When you meet a person as a learner and then as a reader, it is to encounter him newly and freshly, to encounter someone you have never met before, and to face the ultimate privacy of his own inner life. Nothing is predetermined in this world. You will never know his favorite line in the poem, in the story. You cannot predict it. And in that way, none of us are determined by our circumstances, where we come from. I also want to say that reading changed his inner life. It gave him a world, an imagination to place him and his daughter in the same place. The link between reading and writing is so powerful. When we read, we begin to find the words. It gave him images that gave him joy, mountain, ocean, deer, frost, words that taste of a free natural world. It gave him a language for what he'd lost in his world. Reading also taught him his own courage. Remember that he kept reading Douglas in a stairway that had no light. He fought to be conscious, even though he knew being conscious hurts. And he chose to think about difficult things because reading is a form of thinking. I want to end by sharing some of the words he wrote to his daughter during our time together. Dear Cherish, the river is shadowy in some places, and he's talking about the Mississippi River, which runs right through the town that he's from. The river is shadowy in some places, but the line shines through the cracks of trees. When we approach the thickets of cottonwoods and cypress, we hear birds. On some low branches hang mulberries. You stretch your arms straight out to grab some. And this, dear Cherish, close your eyes and listen to the sounds of these words. I know this poem by heart, and I would like you to know it too. Thank you all for being here today, for being connected, for being thirsty for human connection, for showing up for your students. What you do always matters, even if the outcomes aren't things that can be placed on paper, aren't numbers that can be quantified. Giving a person a sense of confidence, a sense that somebody cares for them. I believe in these things so firmly in my soul, and I feel honored to talk to people who are doing this work every day. Thank you so much for letting me be here. And if you'd like to stay in touch with me and share some of your stories, there's so many stories I want to hear. I put some of my contact here and my email. I have a weekly newsletter. It's more about being in Taiwan, which is a whole nother story. I had to follow my husband here, and I'm embracing it. And actually I'm trying to do some adult education work here. So I would love to be in touch. This is a special crowd of people, and I feel very lucky to be here. So thank you for having me, everybody.
You so much, Michelle. I, like many others, am very touched by your remarks this morning. And I hope, certainly I'll follow up with you, but I hope that you're looking at the chat and seeing some of the comments and some of the messages from our listeners. I just want to, wish you well and thank you for taking the time to share this. It's so powerful. I earlier dropped the link into the chat as well to Michelle's website, as well as the link to the book, if you're interested in doing that. And just can't thank you enough, Michelle, for your words, both reflective, but also resounding. And I think you've touched our spirits in some way, and I know have renewed our energy. And we needed, this was the moment that we needed to hear this as a part of the theme of our conference, renewing, recharging, and rebuilding. Is we kind of have to start at the core again and go from there. So thank you so much. From where we are in Michigan today, all across to you there in Taiwan, we wish you the best. Thank you so much for joining us.
I love you guys. I love what you do. And please stay in touch. I mean that. I love hearing what you do. It inspires me to want to keep going.
Thank you, Michelle. I also want to do a huge thank you to Patrick, our Patrick, not the Patrick from the story, for finding Michelle. Otherwise, we honestly, Michelle, sorry, we wouldn't have found you. There's all these great stories out there and inspirational stories out there. And it just took Patrick wandering into a bookstore and finding a book to connect us. I think there's something behind that more than just chance. But I just really appreciate you taking the time coming to us all the way from Taiwan. That's amazing. And Patrick, you do a great job of finding us awesome keynotes. We had a great one on data yesterday, and how tying to go from data to this inspirational story today. I feel like you did a great job of just tying it all together for us. So awesome selections, Patrick. Thank you.
Well, it's all to Michelle, and a special shout out also to our Vice President, Karen Govin. Without her inviting me for lunch that day, we would not have met and we would have not wandered into the bookstore. She was the critical friend that we were daring each other to pull a book from the bookshelf in the middle of the pandemic, just a little bored, a little looking for nourishment of the soul, I guess. And we've certainly found it. So thank you all. Thank you, Michelle. We'll move forward with the rest of our conference. We are going on a break now, and we have concurrent sessions happening all afternoon. Stay engaged with us, stay inspired, stay invigorated, And thank you so much for joining us.
Let's go. The last day. I almost did the MSU song, but it's too long. So I thought the cowbell was better to end with.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Michelle, we'll be in touch.